Hi, welcome back to the sewing room. I'm Lara, and today I want to talk to you about sewing machine tension troubles. Now, sewing machines need to have a good balance between the tension and the thread coming from the needle and the thread coming up from the bobbin. And when they're off, the machine isn't going to sew right. You're not going to get a good seam. So first of all, I'm going to show you how to diagnose when you have a problem with your tension, and then I'm going to show you the top 3 things you should try to fix it if you are having a problem. So let's get started. Now your machine might look different, but the procedure is the same for any machine. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unthread the top threading of this machine so that I can put in a different color. Now it's very important that you use the same type of thread for both the bobbin and the top thread you're going to do, but just different colors. So same weight. I even like to try to stay with the same manufacturer. So if you're using all-purpose thread in your bobbin, you want all-purpose thread in your top, or whatever. You just want them to match. I've got 2 layers of fabric here. This is just quilting cotton, and I'm going to run a line of test stitching. Pretty happy with all 3 of these. And I don't have a machine right now that's really not running well to show you, but just so you can see, here's 3 different lines of stitching. From the top, this is the yellow side, so that was the top thread. Let me really make sure you can see this. You can kind of see that the top thread is kind of easier to see on these top 2, on these 2 on the left. And then on this one, you can actually see the individual stitches. And then if I flip it over, the white side, which was the bottom side, you can see the individual stitches on all of them, but the one farthest to the right here, it just looks a little more prominent, right? It's kind of standing up a little bit more from the fabric. So ideally, I think the closest one we have to an ideal stitch could be this middle one, where you can see that nice solid stitches are forming. Over here, the tension on the top is a little too tight, which you can see because it's more of a straight line and less of defined stitches. And then on the back, you can see defined stitches on the bobbin side. Not defined stitches, defined stitches. So that shows that it's tighter on the yellow side on the top side than it is on the bobbin side on the bottom side. And again, all the bobbin sides look pretty good, but if you, it's very subtle. One on the far right is showing just a little more, which means that fabric is, that thread is getting pulled more to the bottom. So this, on this one, the bobbin is a little tighter than what's on top. So again, none of these are bad, like super bad. The machine is stitching, but you can see that there's a slight adjustment needed right there. Okay, so fun fact, the camera could actually see that stitching better than I could when I was recording the video. But I wanted to show you this diagram anyway. You can see if you look very closely at the previous clip that one thing that is a really solid sign that something is off with your tension is when you see dots from the color on the other side showing up on one side. So if you're looking at the top side, the yellow side, in this case when you see the little white dots, that is a good indication that the tension is off, and you can see in this diagram why that is. Basically, it's pulling the other thread too tight to the top of your fabric. So this is a very good way to see that, and this is a diagram from an old sewing machine manual, so you know you can trust it. Now the first thing to do before you attempt to change anything on the machine is change the needle. And so I've kind of gone over why or when you should change your needle before, but I'm also going to share now some tips for when you change your needle. You want to put something above the throat plate under the presser foot before you take your needle out in case you drop it. It's going to be much easier to save a needle that you've dropped if it's fallen onto something. So that can be a piece of paper, fabric, whatever, but just a little safety thing. You want to do that. And then you just take your needle out, and then don't just put it in your trash can. That's not safe for anybody. So I have a spice jar. I just drop my needles right into. Sometimes I have old medicine bottles, whatever you want, but obviously this is going to hold a lot of needles. I'm not going to have to think about changing this for a long time. And the nice thing about the spice jar, boop, there's already holes. Voila. Easy peasy. After you've done that, you can then insert your new needle. And again, this machine, the needle goes in sideways compared to a lot of other machines. So if your machine looks different, don't worry about it. Come here, get in there. You do want to make sure that you're pushing it as high as it will go. It's very easy to accidentally have the needle lower than it should be, and then it won't sew right. So that's all in. I can thread it again. And that's good to go. The second thing to do when your machine tension isn't perfect is clean the machine. There are lots of reasons that just a little dust or dirt or grit in there can change the way your machine sews. So do yourself a favor, change the needle, clean the machine, and then move on to step 3. Third thing to check when your tension is a bit off is does your needle tension need adjusting? Now in this machine it's on the front, some machines it's on the side. I'll show you a quick shot of some other machines, newer machines. This tends to be a little more hidden. It's right up in front on the old Singers, but this knob here typically has a fairly wide range of adjustment, and you don't normally have to change it a lot. Try just the next number over, even half the next number over. And this is something that doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong with the machine, but it might mean that for different fabrics, your machine sews better at a different level of tension on the needle. All right, this isn't a new machine, but it's newer. And in this case, instead of a knob that you turn, it's a dial that you can rotate. And right here is where I would change my needle thread tension if it needed changing. Just roll that up or down.